want to talk about whether whole team quality means that we are in the same boat or up the creek. Does everybody know what up the creek means? Yeah, it means we have problems. Let's just put it like that. Okay, so I hope that I've realized we have a new company design for the slides, and I think that the text is quite small. I'm going to be saying a lot of things. If there's something you can't see, give me a wave. Am I reverbing?
Yes.
Can it be fixed?
You can get away from the
okay. Well, I'll stand over here then. Oh, there's another one there. Okay, I'll try and not reverb. So, what I want to talk about is whole team quality, WCF. What does that even mean? What do I get confronted with when I talk to people about that? I want to talk about evolution, and I've got some stories about how I've been trying to, it sounds a bit mean if I say I'm trying to evolve people, but basically that's what I end up doing a lot. I want to look a tiny little bit about reptiles and what we can learn from them, and hopefully, if everything goes well, I will leave you with some wise words, and you will go, ah yes, Alex had said some wise things. Yeah, I am a tester. I'm currently a manager as well. I've been a product owner for 8 years, but I think in my heart I'm a tester. I test things, I test the world, I test systems. I love working in agile, and I'm an absolute whirlwind. And the fact that I just spent half an hour in the quiet room meditating is something that does not happen to me. So I'm growing as a person, and I usually find myself in situations where I'm like, how did I end up here? Like up a tree in Thailand or crawling through mud. I work for a company called Bradex. It's a German company. We're pretty awesome. I like it. I have to say that because I'm a manager, but also I actually do like it. And we do a lot of things. We have a lot of focus on quality during development. I have to say that because otherwise, if I come to a conference, people think that our company only does testing, and actually we do a lot of other things as well. Okay, so what do I hear when I say whole team quality? Things I hear. Yay, we can get rid of the testers, right? Because now we don't need them anymore. The whole team's doing it. Okay. So what does the tester actually do? I joke not. I had this question. Unfortunately, it came from a very truthful place of I don't understand, and that was fine. But you do get people being like, well, if I'm doing the testing, what's the tester doing? So you do the whole quality as a tester. Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, no, also. Customer perspective, then I only have to pay for all-rounders, right? We'll get back to all-rounders later. I think that's a bit dangerous. People who don't think it's going to work, I'm like, nah, that's not going to work in this project. We're special. Testing is below my pay grade. From I'm too good to be a tester. It's below my pay grade. Please don't break my heart. I don't want to be a tester. Actually heard that from a guy that I've been teaching exploratory testing to. He's a developer, and he was doing a really good job, and I praised him, and he looked at me in absolute fear and said, please don't make me a tester, which is funny and terrifying and upsetting at the same time, right? And here's the funny thing. What I hear a lot as well is testers saying, I don't want the developers fiddling around with my tests, and developers saying, testers aren't going to come and tell me how to do my job, and like narrator, they could. We'll get back to that later. Basically, when we start talking about these kind of things, we end up in a situation that I like to refer to now as panic penguins. I don't know if penguins panic a lot, I just like the alliteration of it. The thing is, it just makes sense. Thank you. Every single day, every single year, we're growing in our understanding of how important quality is, and quality at all of the places, quality all the things, right? I don't even like the terms shift left and shift right, but they're quite well understood. Doing quality as early as possible, having people who are asking those questions, helping us to build testable software so that we don't build the architecture so that it can't be tested in the first place, and then moving to things that like testing in production and monitoring and observability, which I'm learning about and is fantastic. We know it's super important, and we are gaining more understanding of how important it is. And then when we start looking at things like Internet of Things, industrialization, and all of this stuff, the world is going to become our test environment. That's terrifying, and it means that we have to do a lot more tests. And so in situations like this, I like to ask myself, what would Buffy do? Now, thank you. For those of you who don't know, the premise of Buffy is that there is one vampire slayer per generation, and she has the weight of the world on her shoulders. She is the one who is responsible for saving the world. And I looked at this again when I had been testing for a while, and I thought, that sounds kind of familiar. Wow, thanks, Joss Whedon, you hit me again. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't watched all 7 seasons of it, at the end, they have a magic axe and they enchant it, which means that every potential slayer in the world has the power to become a slayer. So we no longer have this silo, if you'll let me use the word, of one person doing it. Everyone who could, does, and can. And that's exactly the same thing that we need to be doing in teams. Everyone who can should be helping as well. We don't have a magic axe. I've looked, didn't work. So we're going to have to find some other ways. So, a few points in this talk. We are going to have facepalm question time, because questions that I get asked, and I've been asked frequently enough that I kind of go, oh, is this seriously still a question? And I'm nice enough that if it really is coming from a place of I honestly don't understand as opposed to I'm being facetious, then I will be kind to the person. There's an else there, and I'm not going to go into it. So, the first question when we talk about whole team quality is, do we even need testers anymore then, right? Yes. I do have points. Right, we literally just established that quality is all-pervasive. And the first idea that we get into our minds is to get rid of the specialists. Duh. Like, no, let's not do that. Testers are, I like to call, they're team glue, they're stakeholder glue. And I had heard a really, really great thing in a workshop of mine. One of the ladies in it said, a tester is a bit like the pancreas. You don't really know what it does, but if it's gone, you really miss it. And that stuck with me. That was a good thing. It is really unfortunate for us that if we call ourselves testers, and one of the things that we do is called testing, and then we let other people do testing, that people think that that's all we do because of the name. So we have a bad name. But that doesn't mean that that's all we're doing. We're doing so many more things. I don't even have time to go into it right now, but catch me later and I'll even try and give you the list of all of the wonderful things a tester does in any given day. For me, the most important argument for this at some point became the tester is the person in the team who is focused on quality, because if I'm a product owner in a team, I can't be focused on testing. As a product owner, I want to accept this, I want to love it. And as a tester, I don't necessarily want to love it from the get-go, right? I have to be more critical of it. I learned to develop a bit. And while I was developing, and I loved it, it was awesome, it's really cool. And every time a little tester thought came into my mind of, well, what happens if this? I'm like, oh, but I literally just got it to work. I don't want to touch it again. And that's fine, and that's fair. Yeah, it was really frustrating for me. And the other thing is, the tester in the team is the person who has the passion. I don't want a team full of developers who are doing some testing and they hate it, right? I need someone in there who's really excited about testing and is helping make other people excited about it. But we are all going to have to do a bit of evolution, right? Changing circumstances mean that we need to change. We know this in software, we know this from IT. And that's whether you identify as a tester, a developer, a scrum master, a troublemaker, a question or whatever. We are always going to have to keep evolving. And I want to tell you a couple of stories about how we've been looking at that. So the first thing, and I started with this quite a long time ago now, is starting to teach developers how to test. But we always learned, right? Classically, we learned that developers should not test because there were reasons. Because the best thing that you could have is a completely separate test team in a test center of excellence or something. I don't know. No. Because, and it really is, that is so last millennium. We really need to get out of this idea that developers aren't doing testing. And I honestly used to believe, there was a question on Twitter a few weeks ago, what's one thing that you used to believe about testing that you now really don't? And I honestly used to believe that developers shouldn't test. And I've completely changed my mind on that. I now believe that testing is natural, everyone can do it, and everyone can get better at it. The people who have chosen to get better at it are usually better at it. Those happen to be the testers. My current analogy for it is like, testing is like language. Everybody speaks a language. But linguists are the ones who know about it, and who can do it maybe better, right? Everyone speaks it, but not everyone is a linguist. So, and I love pairing with developers to test. It's awesome because they think of things that I wouldn't. It helps the whole team. We need to spread the load anyway. And testing more often is a good thing. So, some of the things that I hear when I'm teaching, and I've been doing workshops with developers for many years now to do exploratory testing. And there's fear, right? I don't know how or I don't know what to test. Oh, my animations have gone a bit. Don't read this bit yet. Exploratory testing is kind of natural. Like I just said, it is if you put somebody in front of a piece of software that they don't know, what they do is explore. Exploring is completely natural. It's what we do as humans. It's a heuristic activity, and that's how we live. The title sounds a bit scary. What I also do is I give them a cheat sheet. I tell them, like with any other things, practice makes perfect. I go and pair with them. We do mob testing sessions. That's actually really been helping because in the teams, they then see what the low-hanging fruit is that the testers find very quickly, and then feel like the developer didn't even look at it. So in a team context, you can even get much, much better at your own kind of testing. And it's more fun for the testers because they get to concentrate on interesting stuff as opposed to, did you even check this? And testopsies, which if you don't know what one of those is, it's like an autopsy but with fewer dead bodies. It's a way of looking at your testing. So you narrate your testing, you say what you're doing. That's a really big topic for me at the moment, so I can't actually talk about it because it'll be a completely different keynote, but come and talk to me about that later. Testing isn't my job or isn't my role. And yes, it is. Sorry, not sorry. It's part of development. It is an intrinsic part of development. In the same way, and this is funny, we have a UX department at the company as well, and they're going through the same problems that my department had like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Oh, do we even really need you? You're not technical enough. Why? Why all the hate? Like, let's work together and collaborate and get things done. And of course, testers are going to support with charters, with their expertise, with coaching and helping. And talking as a person who was a product owner for 8 years, only done is done. I can't release implemented. I won't, because that's not done. So if we are working together to create value for customers, then just having it shunted off to the next JIRA or whatever column isn't enough. We need to get away from JIRA ping pong. It's not a good game. And I might miss important things. And I understand this. This is terrifying. As a tester, I know that if I say, yep, I've tested this, I think it's good, I get scared too that I might have missed things. But here's the great thing. Everyone has blind spots, and if we work together, maybe we'll get rid of some of those blind spots and learn from each other. I honestly do believe you should avoid testing your own things. I don't think that I definitely can't test a thing that I have spent lots and lots of time designing and even partially developing and then go, right, I'm going to take a completely different approach to this and test it. That's something I would say, do that before it doesn't get tested at all, but that would be the last level on that continuum. And if this is great. I might miss important things. Fear is a good guide for a charter. What are you afraid of? Oh, well, I use this new library and I haven't done that before and I'm using... Okay, these are things that I can use as charters. Let's look at these. And then I got a very funny question. Are the testers going to learn to code too? And I had to chuckle to myself a little bit about this because on the one hand, we have this kind of, I don't want testers telling me what to do. And then on the other hand, but I don't want to be the only person who's leaving my comfort zone. And my promise to everyone I work with is that I will push you out of your comfort zone at some point. So yes, actually, we did start teaching testers how to code. And we have a lot of testers who come from backgrounds like I do. I did linguistics. We've got doctors. We've got chemists. We do have some people that studied computer science. That's the word for it in English. So we started teaching them to code. And one of the reasons was that we were doing quite a lot of UI level tests, and we were doing it with the tool that I was the product owner for. And it was done in a kind of, it was done in a very UI way. You could drag and drop things and everything's fine. That was great for the testers, but it meant that the developers really didn't want to play with that because it wasn't written in code. A lot of the projects that we work on Java, they didn't want to play with that. And we were like, actually, this kind of needs to be brought into the team. The developers need to be using it too. Okay, let's do this. We need to make sure that our UI tests are part of the whole team. Let's teach the testers to code. Next dumb question. Sorry, I was promised myself I wasn't going to say dumb because that's not good. Next facepalm question. Does this mean that all testers have to code, or that only developers should automate, that we should just push all of the automation to the developers if it's going to become more technical anyway? No. It means that everybody in the team has something to contribute towards automation and towards coding practices, and that everybody might have something to learn. That's interesting. I have an extra slide. That's fine. Okay, so teaching testers to code. This is a path. coding is not a binary thing. It's not, I am a full stack, I don't even know what a full stack developer is supposed to be. Anyway, it's not, I can do everything in every language, in every library, front, back, all of the things, or I have literally never seen a computer in my life. Those aren't the two things that we have. Talking about code, reading code, talking about things that might be done in code are all of the first steps on the path to being able to do this. It is, don't get me wrong, as somebody who has only learned to program a bit when I got to like 25, 20, I don't know, maybe a bit older, it's hard to start thinking like that. But once you've got it, you kind of understand how these things work. And actually, it's really improved my testing because I have a very good idea of all of the kind of interesting stuff that can be going on in the background. I sometimes refer to myself as a senior developer who can't program. If you sit me next to somebody, I am an intensely good programmer. Just, I can't do it on my own. I can't actually do it, but I can say how to. Like, that's kind of cool, but I haven't quite put that on my CV yet. So, and what we did was, we said, okay, we created a specific course, we called it Java for Testers, did it internally, and most of it actually focused on just static methods. Because as it turns out, if you're doing tests, we're not actually doing much in terms of object orientation. We're just saying, do this, click this, check that. We don't need to be doing complicated stuff. Even I can read this. We gave them that. We had interesting conversations with the developers because they were like, ugh, we learned that static methods are horrible. Okay, well, how about this? And we actually came to the point where the developers would definitely much prefer to be doing object-oriented stuff, but they've accepted that this is a good enough way of doing tests and that they can actually collaborate with people now who, if you start adding a lot of object stuff in there, are going to actually go, okay, maybe this is too much. Funnily enough, some of them said we actually do want to learn more, and I very nearly lost a very good tester to development about a year ago. Because she got so excited about doing this, she started fixing bugs for, I embrace it. I joke, but I embrace it. If that's where she wants to go, and I want to support it. We let them ask for more, and this was not that scary. So, and it's used differently. So things I started to hear, this kind of came up again a bit. And I have two people that I work closely with, one as a developer, one as a tester, and they were working together on a project. And funnily enough, they both came to me separately. The developer said, that guy, the tester, he's written some code in the tests and it's not good. I can see problems with it. Do you think he'd let me give him a code review? And I'm like, yeah, I think if you ask nicely, then sometimes I feel like mum, right? I think if you ask nicely, then he will. And then a couple of weeks later, the tester came back to me and was like, that was really useful, but there's one thing that he used in the code review, and it was lambda, and I don't really get that, and I'd like to tell him that. I'm like, yeah, I think if you communicate that nicely to him. Funny how being open and communicative and kind to each other can get you all the way. That is literally my job now as a manager. I'm the catalyst between that person not talking to that person and just making it happen and then kind of walking away. That's fine. So things that I started hearing after this started taking hold. Can we talk about the code of this technical action? Because when it comes to automation, the lower level you get, the more technical it's going to be. And that's where the testers, depending on their experience and background, are going to need maybe a bit more input. So yeah, let's talk about this. Started looking at code from a different perspective. I might not use a ternary operator if I know that the person reading this only started to learn Java 3 weeks ago. I might write it a bit longer, right? It won't kill me. Can that friendly developer come and give us a group code review? Little hearts in my eyes. Yes, he can. And since then, that friendly developer has done a lot of unit testing workshops with us as testers as well. Awesome stuff. I'm interested in pairing with testers, maybe even for other things. Java for testers may be different for Java and code. How are you writing UI tests? What patterns are you using? We put a lot of thought into how we write them, and now suddenly developers are interested in how we do that and why. And I always say if we learn from them that the way we're doing something is wrong and we agree it's wrong, that's great, we've learned. If we convince them that the way we're doing it might be right, even better as well. And if we can't agree, well, that happens sometimes as well, and we just have to live with it. I want to learn more Java. We should think about other tests too. Finally, my life aim of developers wanting to do more testing, right? So does this mean that testers should now write production code? No. We need to get over the idea that it's binary, like I said. Just because I can write, you wouldn't want me sitting writing your production code. Not for very long, even though I'm reasonably good at doing the things that I do. And it's not the most important thing, it's not the only thing in a project. I know that code is the most visible thing that we do, and that testing is depressingly invisible for a lot of things. But it's not the only thing. And I added a new point to this slide, because also, maybe, I've had at least 3 examples of people in my team now who've gone to a project and they've started fixing some bugs and helping out. And if they want to and they're supported to, then why the hell not? Why ever not? It just shouldn't be the, okay, you're here to do the testing, please go and fix this really, really important issue that you know nothing about, but we're just going to assume. And the other thing that I've started quoting myself, my ego is huge. At some point I said, this whole should all testers learn to code. I also want to ask the question, should all developers learn to communicate with people that don't? Because there's a two-way system there. And I now believe that, yes, it's very helpful for testers to learn how to code. For me, one of the things was just having empathy with developers, because until I had 2 classes and managed to get a null pointer myself, I always thought you all were dumb. Oh, I said that word again. I always thought you were all stupid. But then I was like, well, why would you point at something that isn't there? And then I managed it with 2 classes, and I'm like, actually, it's quite easy. And it's great, and it helped me to get respect with them, because one of the first questions that I then learned to ask when I was going with a developer, okay, what you doing? Okay, what happens if it's null? And then they look at me and go, oh yeah. And somewhere inside their heads goes, maybe she knows what she's talking about. But it's a two-way thing. And we should learn to communicate with people who don't speak our language, and that's whether it's testers or developers or whatever. Jargon is bad for us. Okay, so, back full circle, don't we just need an agile chimera? If everyone's going to be doing everything that everyone else is doing anyway, why do we even need these roles, right? Have you seen a chimera? That's scary. And the great and interesting thing is that this chimera can never be a pigeon, because it can't fly. Right? It can never be anything else than what it is. It's terrifying, and it can never change. So I say no. I say that we don't need a Swiss Army knife team member. One of the biggest misunderstandings for me in terms of agile is that when we say that we don't want silos, that what we mean is that we want carbon cutouts of the person that can do everything. First of all, that doesn't exist. And second of all, one of the other things that we know from agile is that cross-functional teams and diversity are important. So how could we even make those 2 things work at the same time? But we tend to focus on this idea of having somebody that can do everything. I honestly don't know why. I believe strongly that we should blur lines without merging roles, because focus and specialization are important. I also believe that we shouldn't have a hierarchy, a pecking order, that developers are better than testers, are better than UXers, are better than Scrum Masters. We feel that somehow. And we need to get rid of that. We need to call that out when we see it, because everybody is contributing value. And if you're not, what are you doing? Change that. And interestingly enough, we don't get a UX person or a business analyst in the team and go, I think you should be able to program and do everything. So why do we do this with testers and developers? Why do we assume that a developer can do everything a tester can do, or that a tester can do everything a developer can do? It's weird. And apart from anything else, evolution does not give us chimeras. Evolution gives us chameleons. Chameleons are cool. I don't even know if this is a real picture. I just like it. And a chameleon asks itself, what color do I need to be for this context? And I like to talk about, this is a great sentence, dynamic persona and context-based team composition. You heard it here first. The idea is, what do I need to be to fulfill the needs of my team, to provide value to people right now? That could be today, that could be different from tomorrow, and it's definitely going to be different if I go to a new team. I might have to be the enabler. I might have to be the person convincing people. I might have to be the person that sits down, builds an example, and says, look, it can work. I might be the person that asks a lot of questions. I might be the person that just has all of the knowledge about lots of things in their head and is the person that you go to. That role looks different all over the place. Chimeras. Not chimeras, chameleons. So I want to give you a couple of concrete measures of things that I've seen that work, that maybe you can try out for this kind of thing. So, things to do. I like doing future perspectives. Do a future perspective with your team of how a perfect enabled team for whole team quality would look. How would we notice? What acceptance criteria would we have to notice that we did that? One example is the tester is on holiday. We get the sprint done, the definition of done is all fine, and when the tester comes back, we say, thank God you're back. Right? That would be one example. I have more. Expectation and role mapping, a great way of finding out what does the tester actually do. Write down on Post-its all of the roles, all of the things that you do, all of the things you expect other people to do, and put them on a map and have a nice conversation about it. You can use that same kind of thing as a skill matrix, that if you notice that one person alone is doing something, to have a conversation about how many other people should maybe learn that, because we all know how dangerous bus factors are. Does everyone know what a bus factor is? How many people would have to be hit by a bus for the team to be in serious trouble? There is a reverse bus factor, do you know that as well? How many people would have to be hit by a bus for the team to be doing better? we don't talk about that in politeness. And my very favourite thing, if you're a tester, is just to sit next to a developer. Just do. Ask what they're doing and learn. Things to observe. Not having a test lane. Having a work in progress limit that is actually enforced, and those two things coupled together encourages us to say, okay, how are we going to get this done? I'm going to help you test. Mobbing and pairing as a routine. This is a good thing. Encouraging your testers to be less of a person that waits for something and more of a coach and a consultant. How about we do this? How about we try this? I'll come and help you with this. And we above I. One of the future-spective things that I say is, what response would we expect from a team where the product owner or a customer ever comes in and says, you completely screwed up this release, it's awful, which one of you let this error through? And the team answers, we did. That's what I want to see. That idea. It wasn't you, it wasn't, maybe I didn't test. We did. We as a team. Things to ask. My favourite question is, what you doing? It has got me into so many interesting planning situations. Oh, okay, yeah, sit down, and then 3 hours later, like, oh, that was a really nice session, yeah, thanks, haha. It's also a Jedi mind trick, just to get you in there. What can we get done today? Instead of, what are you going to test, Alex? Or what am I going to take from the new column? What do we get done today? You can notice I was a product owner. Done is very good for me. What are we going to test where? These are good things to hear about user stories. And can you help me? Asking for help is a very, very strong thing to do, because it shows that you're willing to have someone else look over your stuff. And maybe next time I want you to look over theirs. Okay, core skills that we need. I say social glue, and depending, if you come to workshops with me, I will encourage you within the realms of your own ethics to do a certain amount of social engineering. That starts with baking biscuits, and it can end with deliberately putting yourself in a slightly lower position than somebody so that they feel good and they were willing to teach you things. And not everyone is willing to do that, which is why it's always a bit dangerous. And one thing that I'm looking at right now is actually, if somebody does something and you don't like it, to tell them. This is really difficult for me because I'm British. We're not so good at this. But it works wonders. Actually just talking to people and saying, hey, I didn't think that was very good and it made me feel like this. Crazy. Teach everyone some testing and teach everyone some coding. And I'm not gonna lie. I was talking about this at lunchtime. One of my greatest successes after preaching about how awesome mobbing was for so long and doing a couple of sessions and saying, hey, people, we should really be doing this, and having some pretty hard resistance from other people. Brought in a consultant to do it for a week with us, and some of the people that were my biggest contenders are now coming to me and saying, hey, Alex, mobbing is brilliant. I'm like, just okay, somebody else came and told you, that's fine. I still feel responsible. And anti-patterns that we don't want to see, only the tester is doing hands-on testing. To test still kind of exists, even if you don't have a lane for it. Anyone who has a silo, and any type of test belonging to one role alone. I honestly believe that unit tests should be written by the developer who's doing the code. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a tester pairing on them. Pairing on unit tests is one of my favorite. It's awesome. I've been doing some stuff with TDD with the developers, and it's cool. It almost makes me want to become a developer just so I can do that. It's awesome. So, excited about that. Does it work though, Alex? I'm going to say yes, because I've seen teams go from 6-week release phases to 0-day release phases, where they can just say, yep, let's ship it. I've seen developers and testers doing code reviews with each other. I've seen testers, myself included, but other people not being able to get enough of learning about unit tests, about developers getting excited about doing UI testing with people. It takes a long time. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight. But I have seen change, and I believe it can happen. I've worked with some really good teams. The other answer to the does it work is that I feel like we kind of have to make it. We might not have the cute boat that the minions were in. It might be more of a raft. It might be sometimes kind of sinking, and we have to put it back together again with Pritt stick and duct tape. But in the way that we're going in terms of how important quality is, and every single person is so much more aware of quality now. We have Amazon, Google, and Apple to thank for that. Since we've been able to rate things, we are aware that we are allowed to rate things, and we are allowed to find them bad. And if you look at things like Uber, if a driver has a rating of lower than 4.8, they're afraid they're going to get fired. We have high expectations now, and we know that we're allowed to talk about them. So even for software that you just think is going to be, they have to use it, people aren't going to do it anymore. So we have to make this work. Okay. Funnily enough, I've been talking about quality the whole time, and I actually want to move away from that, because quality and coding and testing and development, these are words for things that are part of a whole. The whole is value. If we're not delivering value, we're not doing something right. So I actually want to talk about whole team value and how every one of us contributes to that. We need to be chameleons, not chimeras, also not panic penguins, but definitely chameleons. I think learning is one of the most important things that we can be willing to do. Always learning new things, being humble about that, and then also being willing to share what we've learned so that we can evolve, and talking to people is pretty much magic. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Alex. You had some great suggestions there about what team members and maybe team leads can do as well to help make this better and heal this divide that I frequently see in our organisation. What can people further up the organisation do, though? Have you given any thought to that?
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that, because I had it as a note on a slide and you just made me realise I forgot it. As anyone who is in any kind of management position, you have to explicitly allow that those things are happening. Learning costs time. It brings a lot, but it costs. And so it has to be a thing that you tell your teams, I expect this, I want this. And one of the things I try and do is show that I really believe that by even me in my management role going and pairing with people. I have a pairing an hour every week where I choose someone from my team and I'm like, hey, can we just sit together and pair? And I'm careful to tell them that it's not me controlling their work. The way that I sell it to them is that I say, if I don't stay a little bit hands-on, then I'll lose all of my credibility. And I don't want to do that, and I want to keep learning. So can you teach me? And it usually ends up being a lovely thing where I say, have you thought about this? And they go, oh, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, can I ask a question about? So tell it and show it by doing it. And I think that making the space for that is a really important thing.
Anybody else?
I enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much. There's a question about teaching tester to code. I still not sure I fully understand. What's the benefit? I know that teams say, oh, they cannot test, or they cannot test. They cannot write code. Apart from that, what's the reason benefits to the organization for the tester to teach them coding? If they can just do testing, work on preventing the bug at every place, they can work on the schemes and the plans. There's no need for them to do testing, coding, I presume. What's the benefit for that?
I think, good question. I think that the benefit is that I can be involved in doing automation. Even I know that there are tools out there, because I was involved in one. There are tools out there that you don't need to be able to code, but actually it ends up being very, very close to coding. You need to start to think like a developer. So being involved in automation is really good, because I have seen enough examples of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's because developers don't specialize in testing. I've seen enough examples of unit tests where I'm like, that's not a test. Sure, you've written 100 of them, and maybe you have some code coverage, but we're actually not finding things out, and just having a tester sitting next to that person or writing the UI automation suite, or pairing with people. So I think that's benefit 1. They can actually be much more involved in a lot of things. I think benefit 2 is that they are likely in like 3 amigo conversations. So if I hear things like, oh, we're going to do it like this, and we've got if this, I'm like, that's going to be complex code. I know what the code for that would look like. I can model that in my head, and I know where the risks might be, and I can start to talk to the developer already now about how we're going to mitigate that. And the other thing is empathy. We know that there's this idea of testers coming to developers going, ha, I found a code, stupid developer. That's not helpful for anyone. It's fun sometimes, but it's not helpful. And understanding that where the risks can be, and that we make mistakes, and we will make mistakes, and that's okay. I'm not going to say that's the main benefit, but it's a really big one. And it's, at the end of the day, it's what we work with. Whichever perspective that we see it from, I work with code. I don't see the code all of the time, but it's part of what I work with, and so why wouldn't I want to learn more about it? Those are 4 that I can think off the top of my head.
That's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you for having me.